to run through the testing of that transistor for you in case you haven't got one of these and you can do it the old school way. So set your meter to diode test, and then I'll put up on the screen now the layout at the bottom of the can. And then what we're going to do is we're going to test the base to emitter, and it should act like a diode, so it should only give a reading on here one way. So we'll try it this way first. No reading. Swap your probes around. Reading. So that's base to emitter's good. Base to collector. Oh, sorry, wrong pin. Try again. Base to collector. No reading that way. Swap my pins around, probes around. And we got a reading. And then collector to emitter. Shouldn't give a reading with the probes either way round. If it does, the transistor's no good. And we got no reading, so that's good. So that's definitely why that transistor, I'm going to pop that back in, because that's an original and it's still good. I've checked it on the meter and the HFE rating should be between 70 and 300, and it's 118, so it's still fairly low and still good. So right. Oh, also in the meantime, I've popped one of the new capacitors in. I got asked by someone if I could post up all the parts that I'm putting in and where I'm getting them from, which I will do at the end of the video, just in case we need new parts. So I've got this here, this to go next to it, then I've got another capacitor to go down here, and the 1 ohm resistor to go back in. I'm also going to test the 2 diodes here I've tested, they're good. I want to test these 2 capacitors, make sure they're good. I want to test this big capacitor we got up the top, and that capacitor there, I've already tested that resistor. And then we've tested everything on the board. Oh, and there's one more capacitor down the back here as well that I want to test as well. So anyway, let me get this soldered in, and then we'll go to put the other capacitor in as well. This capacitor that runs along the top here, I've just tested it and I've got 1027 picofarads. When I look on my diagram here, it shows that C13 should be a 270 picofarad 2 kilovolt capacitor, but C13 on mine is 1000 picofarad 4 kilovolt capacitor. So for me, that's wrong. That doesn't look wrong to me, so I'm going to leave that on there. That looks like the original part, and you could see how much of a pain it is to get into this unit. So I think that's what it came with. I think that diagram is wrong. So if any of you do venture in and you have a look, here's a picture of the writing on the capacitor now on its face, and at the bottom you can see it says 1N0-M. That means 1000 picofarads. So that is that correct part there. I think that's right, and as I say, the diagram's wrong. So that's tested and that's completely okay. I've also tested both of these ceramic capacitors here, which should be 82 picofarad, and both of those are fine. I've got this little one here left to test, but I'm slowly getting through the stuff and everything seems good, so I don't think we're that far off putting it back together. The other thing I'm going to do today is a really miserable wet day outside, so I thought, well, what better to do than do a bit of work on this, is I need to desolder this last remaining part that's on there. I've put both of the capacitors in here. I've tilted the transistor over to one side because the body of this was quite close to its legs, so they're now further away and it can't touch. So that's good. And as we say, we tested all those and replaced them. The 2 diodes I've tested. I've also tested this capacitor here, and that's fine. I've got this little one in the top corner to test. This one and the other one. And we're pretty much there. So I'm just waiting for parts. I've ordered the replacement ones for these. They are slightly smaller, but as I say, things evolve, and parts, particularly capacitors, do get a bit smaller, but they're the same voltage rating and same value, just a slight bit smaller. So Right, let's get on testing a few more capacitors, and we'll also desolder this. And underneath this, there's a load of, I don't know what it is, like brown residue on the PCB. So whether this one's leaked or whether that was glue, I don't know. We'll have a look when we get this out. I've just noticed this on the back of the PCB. We've got Bremi BRL200 and 21st of the 10th, 77. So that gives you some idea of the age of what we're working on here. That's not bad. Oh yeah, excuse me. Oh. It's definitely survived well, and obviously Parma, Italy, which is obviously where Bremi were based. So 1977. Oh well. Yeah, I was around then. Not very old, but I was about. There's another discrepancy. C4, it said, should be 4.7 nanofarads. Well, I've got 502 stamped on the component, which I'll make 5 nanofarads. So it's not 4.7 N, it's 5 N. So C4 on this diagram is wrong as well. And I've tested the part and I actually get remember, because I've forgotten it. So if that's supposed to be 5 nanofarads, we actually get, which is 5,000 picofarads, we get 9,487 picofarads, and that's meant to be 5,000. So that looks to be a bit out. So I might have to get another one of those. God, there's a lot of capacitors gone down, but then if you think about the age of it, yeah, 9,051 picofarads. That should only be 5,000, so that capacitor is shot by the looks of it. Okay, so I'll order another 502 capacitor and we'll chuck that in. Well, I'm not going mad, I just went and double checked with an online device, and 502 is definitely 5 nanofarads, which is 5,000 picofarads. So the fact we're getting up towards 10,000, that capacitor is shot. So it's definitely worth going through and checking all the little ceramics in there as well. Jesus, there's a lot wrong with this. So I've got the 1 ohm resistor wrong, the two 470 capacitors were wrong. I've got that wrong. I'm trying to think now. I've got so much stuff on order, I've just lost track with it now. Right, anyway, I will carry on, and so I've got to go and order some of those now. C4 is actually on the board. You can see you've got relay sitting here, valves there. C4 actually spans across here. You've got a piece of wire running up there, like a link wire. The C4 sits across here and goes between that valve and this valve. So that wouldn't have been helping. So that's good to find. These two have been tested, they're done. I've done the one the other side down here, I think. So there's just one more little capacitor tucked right down in here to desolder, and then we're good to go. But oh yeah, and that was different, but I'm leaving that in, and that tests as it reads, so that's good. Right, let's get this last capacitor out, and then we'll order one of these, and hopefully the other one will be okay. Oh, and then I'm going to potentially, actually I'm not going to desolder that now. I've been looking at this. I need to do that last, because when I prop this up, you can see the valves are off the table. It's because it's resting on this, and then it holds it nicely on this. If I take that off, it won't come off, so that's staying on for a while. Oh, and I've ordered the fuses as well. I'll cover those, so if you need those, you've got them as well. But yeah, that was a good find. The resistor here is R1, which is a 1 mega ohm resistor. Tested that, tests it fine. This one here is C3, which according to the circuit diagram is a 270 picofarad 1 kilovolt capacitor. However, having desoldered it and tested it, I get 333-ish picofarads but when you look on it, it's a 331K 1 kilovolt device. So it is a 330 picofarad. So C3, shown as 270 picofarad, is wrong. It's 330, but the 1 kV is correct. So we've got another discrepancy on this circuit diagram. It's not very good, is it? But it does test okay, so that can go back in. Well, I managed to get out C9, which lives down in the corner here. It's a 33 microfarad ceramic. And normally I think they're about 10% tolerance or 5%. So for 33, at 10% it'll be 36.3. And as you can see, that one's getting up that way. So I think I'm going to take on the side of caution and order a 33 picofarad ceramic and put one of those in while we got it in bits as well. So right, I'll get one of those ordered and we'll see where we go. Next thing we're going to look at is component C5, which is this electrolytic capacitor. It's 100 microfarad 16 volt on the back of the board. And the way it's wired round at the moment, you can see you've got the valves to the right side of the board. This leg at the top is the negative of the electrolytic, and this terminal here is the positive. So negative at the top towards the valves, positive towards the bottom. So let me get that desoldered. We'll whack it in the component tester, see if it's any good or not. So that's replaced the capacitor with a like for like. Only difference is the colour, exactly the same size. But this was a 16 volt, and I've now gone to a 50 volt. That was the only thing I could find with the same dimension, so that's what we've gone for. That's all soldered in, and this is the negative, and that's the positive terminal. So that's all done, and that tested at bang on 101 microfarads, so that's spot on. And again, I'll put a link up to the parts that I use for that and the dimensions, etc. for the can size. So that bit's finished, so on to the next bit. Oh, on the diagram, this is capacitor C5, which you'll see spans across the bottom of the relay. And this is the relay here, and that's where the terminals go. So I've just IPA'd the back of the board. You can see all the crud and stuff I've got off of there. Look at that. And that was all where you solder it. The board looks like new now. That's a lot better. So there you see some lovely sparkly clean valves. I've cleaned those up with just glass cleaner. I'll put a picture up on the screen now. Here you can see what I used to clean them. The earbuds, or Q-tips as some people call them around the world. And all I did was spray onto the glass and then just went up and down with the earbuds or Q-tips and cleaned it all off, and you can see the amount of muck that has come off of those valves. So they are lovely and shiny now. So yeah, it was really dirty. And then I also just polished the outside case of the relay. That's come up lovely. And what we're going to do now is I purchased 2 lots of 1 ohm resistors. These are Vichy, so this is a well-known make of resistors. And then I also purchased some cheap rubbish ones off of Fleabay. And we'll compare the values and see how close they are. Now we had a 1 ohm resistor that had gone to 1.4 ohms, so that was outside of spec. So let's see what happened if I bought the cheap ones to replace it and I didn't have a meter, and then I brought these ones to replace it and I didn't have a meter either. So what I'm going to do now is desolder the other valve, the other massive capacitor that's on there. Because there's a lot of solder, I'm going to use my solder sucker first before I use my braid that you normally see me using. So what I will do is give that a good mount, then take most of that off. And then what you'll see here is how much solder that's sucked up, just being dropped out onto the mat, which is now Just blocked my solder sucker up. Right, there's all the solder it blocked up. I've managed to clear out the solder sucker. So it's desoldered that side, so we'll go in and do this lump here. Right, side 2. Oh, I haven't primed it. And guess what? It won't prime. Hang on, our solder sucker is well and truly jammed. So what I normally do is get myself a little pin, stick it in the top of there, just give it a gentle tap. And the slug is slowly coming out. You can use the pliers to get it again. Well, you can't see it, but the slug's nearly out. So what we need to do is stand that on something there, like so. Hold on. Then get something else to give it a gentle tap while it's flat. That's not heavy enough to do it. Should be able to do it on top of my other pair of pliers, hopefully. That seems to have done it. No, it's burst through the solder. Oh, I'll have to go back the other way now. Sometimes 5-minute jobs are actually the worst. You can see the lump of solder sticking out the end there. Right, that's coming off. So, how can I get that out? Well, it's almost there. Might be able to just give that a wiggle. Push that out. God, that's well and truly stuck right. Right, I've cleared it. Absolutely gunked. I've got all this out of it now, so it should be, hopefully, good enough to do it now. Right, take 500. Nothing like forgetting to press the button. Oh, damn thing's jammed again. Oh. And that's the problem with them solder suckers. Right, let's get some braid on it. It's got a good bit off, but what a pain in the backside. Oh, it's released itself now. No, it's jammed up again due to the amount of solder coming out the end. Oh well. Right, let's braid it. Let's take a nice lot off. That's that. Right, it's all desoldered and loose and ready to be extracted. And it's out. So I'm going to get my tester and we'll test that one. But I wanted to clean this up and get all this off the board as well. So let's get a bit of isopropyl alcohol. We'll give that a clean. Yeah, one thing I wanted to ask you all as well, if you've ever used IPA, you have like an initiation ceremony with IPA, i.e. comment below how much you've actually spilt, because if you use IPA, there's a big problem or a big potential that you've actually spilt it in the past. And you haven't actually lived until you've done that with your IPA. But I don't know whether you can see this, but whatever that brown stuff is, nothing coming off this board, which is interesting. No, so that's not coming off at all. I'll just have to leave that on there then. I don't even think that will scrape off. Looks like it will scrape off. I'll probably end up scratching the PCB a bit, but I don't want it on there. I don't know whether it's that corrosive glue that you can get on there, I don't know. But it's coming off. So, let me get rid of this. I'll be back. Right, so now that capacitor's out, let's test it and see what we get. So it's 113.6 microfarads. That's 100 microvolts, so 20%, so should, yeah, can go up to 120 microfarads and down to 80. So 113, so it's on its way up, but it's still good. Now in the box you see here, I have the replacement for this. You might be quite surprised. And there is the replacement for this. A bit of a difference in size, isn't there? So yeah, that's what we're going to be using. Now what you see on the bench, this has got a red end and it's got a silver end. And the red end means positive, silver negative. This has got a black end and this has got a silver end. No red end. So how do you know which is the negative end? Well, you look down here at the stripe and you can see there's an arrow and an arrow here pointing this way. So the silver end is the negative end and the black end is the positive end, and that's how you tell with the replacement capacitor. Now this is going to have to go across that gap where the other one was sitting. So it's going to have to span here, and then I'm going to have to bend the legs to get the thing to sit in the middle. So I'm just going to work out where it needs to bend. I'm going to use my forming tool that I've got, just put this through and bend it down one side. It'll make it a lovely and straight fit. Actually it will need to go that way because the positive one here, then we'll have to flip it round and put the negative one here. But it's good that these shrunk in size because it gives us a bit more room. So I formed them using the former, and what I did is I just put the leg across, just across there, like so, and then just bent it down the side. And I did them all four in the same position, and that gave me a nice bend. Now when you're looking at this here, you've got the relay up here, you want the negative one here, positive here, negative there. So that's pointing to the negative, so that needs to drop in there. And that's pointing towards the negative there. That needs to drop in there. Let me just get these in. Right, let's just check the value of this before we bung this in. So 99.9 microfarad. Now if like me, the burning question you're asking is how good are these out the box? Right, there's the back one, got the two leads on, let's test it. And we get 100.3 microfarads, so that's bang on. Change the leads onto the other one. And we get 99.86 microfarads, so they are practically bang on 100 microfarads. I'll post up a link of where I've got these from, because these are going to be crucial for your build. So that's the two capacitors in there. I'm very pleased with how they've gone in actually. They look a good fit. So hopefully these will be okay. I don't see why they shouldn't, because the other ones stood up here, so they shouldn't hit anything. But I might put a bit of sleeving round each bit of that just to be on the safe side, especially here, depending on where that contacts with. But yeah, it's looking good. I've got them all soldered on the back. So you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, all nicely on. So yeah, it's coming together. So I've just fitted the 1 ohm resistor here, and what I noticed is there's 2 little holes to the left, 2 little holes to the right, which holded it going, so I had to look back through my video. It goes in the 2 holes to the right. I'll put a picture on the screen and show you it fitted now. And then the hole on the top left, nearest to the capacitor, is where the thin orange wire will go. I'll cover that later. And then the hole directly above the transistor and below the diode is where the blue wire, thin blue wire, goes to when we put it back together. So I've got one capacitor, which is a 33 picofarad, I believe. I think it's C9, to go in that corner there. And then every single component is on this section of the board. Just got this one to sort out, but it's pretty hard to see. That's it down the back there, so I'll just solder that in, and that's the last component on this board apart from wiring to be connected. Then we'll move on to the other side. So using my drawing that I made with all the components laid out, I've checked it and everything now is back on this side of the board. The only thing I have just noticed is on the back there's a 220 ohm resistor that went across a transistor here. It's R3, it's a 220 ohm resistor. I can't find the one I took off. I don't know what I've done with it. I'll have to have a look round. If not, I'll have to order one. So I think we'll have to leave the video there today. And then we'll go on to a part 4. I mean, there was a lot more work in part 3 than I thought there was going to be, with what we found with the components, with the values all changing. But we've worked through it and we've got the thing all looking good again now. I'm very pleased with how the valves cleaned up. I've never cleaned the valves before. So I'll get that resistor and then we can start putting this back into the case. But I hope you're all enjoying this. It's a bit more, as I say, a bit more involved than I thought. But that means we cover more, and then hopefully, as per most of my videos, if someone has a problem in the future, this will be of use for you. It's strange that resistor went missing, because all the parts I take out I've been putting in this pot. I've got everything in there but the resistor. I know I had it sitting here. Maybe it's fallen on the floor, I don't know. But if it has, it's gone, but I'll have a look about.